At the end of the Good Samaritan parable, as we just heard, Jesus asked who the traveler's neighbor actually was, and the scholar replied with, "The one who treated him with mercy." Jesus responded with, "Go and do likewise." This parable is still valid today, even though it might apply differently. How can we be neighbors to those in need, like the Samaritan? How can we show mercy to others, even if we belong to differing groups? Instead of thinking about who our neighbor is, we can think about how we can be a neighbor. Even though the traveler at first might not have thought of a Samaritan as his neighbor, it wasn't the religious men who stopped to help him. It was the Samaritan at the end of the day. In modern times, those resembling the traveler could be battling sickness, injury, addiction, mental illness, or even abandonment or despondency. They could be on the streets, in schools, hospitals, workplaces, shelters, and sometimes in our own homes. As most, if not all of us have noticed, the number of homeless or struggling people in the streets has grown significantly since the pandemic. Moreover, with the recent unwinding of Medicaid coverage, roughly 25 million people have lost their coverage, and those numbers are expected to grow in the coming years, creating more opportunities for people all over America to suffer from poor or non-existent health care. Like the traveler, they are often overlooked or passed by out of indifference, fear, or busyness. The Samaritan has a different response. He does not act out of prejudice or convenience. He stops, acts, and cares. It could have been challenging for him at that moment, as it was inconvenient and costly for him, but what he did was real. This kind of compassion is not about being put on a pedestal for incredible heroic feats, but instead about showing mercy when it would have been easier not to, even if no one was there to see it. That is one of the ways we can foster a strong community, by pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones to help those in need around us, however it may look like. We can positively react to their conditions by providing medical assistance, advocating for better health care, donating to charities and volunteering, or even just listening to them without judgment. The act of being a neighbor is not confined to shared background or distinctions, but instead that of crossing boundaries to show mercy, kindness, and compassion. And by being a neighbor, we are taking small steps to improve our community of people around us. In turn, we make real, strong, and long-lasting relationships with others. In the parable, the Good Samaritan did not change the world, but he changed the world for one man. Let us go and do likewise.
When Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan, he's not just trying to teach us to be kind. The question isn't, who is my neighbor, but how can I become a neighbor? That means showing love, compassion, and care to anyone who is hurting, even if they're completely different from us. In the parable, the Samaritan helps a Jewish man who's been robbed and beaten and left on the side of the road. That's a big deal, because back then, Jewish people and Samaritans did not get along, and helping each other was not common. They were from different backgrounds, different traditions, and more often than not, they fought each other. That makes the Samaritan's decision to stop and help, even though others walked past, even more meaningful, as he shows what it really means to love your neighbor, no matter who they are. Today, I think this lesson is still important. We live in a world where people are judged or treated differently just because of where they are from or the color of their skin. Sometimes, people act like their race or nationality makes them superior, and that is a kind of thinking that is exactly what Jesus is challenging. Becoming a neighbor isn't about doing something heroic, but helping others no matter where they are or who they are. It's about choosing to see someone's humanity before anything else. Jesus wants us to live differently from the rest of the world and to love everyone. That means standing up against racism, treating immigrants and people of different backgrounds with respect and humanity, and not just caring when it's easy. Becoming a neighbor is hard sometimes, but it's what love looks like the way Jesus intended it.
Who is my neighbor? This question was asked to Jesus in the parable, by Jesus in the parable of the Good Samaritan in the Gospel of Luke, and it holds great relevance to our lives today. We live in communities where people of many faiths, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and others, live side by side. The parable poses a challenge to cultural and religious boundaries. The hero of the parable is not a priest or a Levite, but a Samaritan, someone from a group hated by many of Jesus' contemporaries. This Samaritan saw someone in need and responded with compassion, regardless of religious difference. The parable ends with a command from Jesus to go and do likewise. We are called to follow that example. Jesus' second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself, and he gave no qualifications for who counts as a neighbor. Everyone, regardless of faith, background, or culture, is made in the image of God. When we recognize this, we begin to see people not as strangers, but as brothers and sisters. In our world, which grows more shaped by division and fear each day, we must remember the parable of the Good Samaritan and show love to everyone, regardless of our differences. I've had my own experience with a similar issue. Admittedly, there was a time when I, too, was influenced by the widespread exaggerations and prejudices against our Muslim neighbors. I was afraid of them due to manipulative and misleading stories I had heard, which had negatively shaped my view of Islam and those who practice it. However, as I became friends with more Muslims, I saw the truth, that they are some of the most friendly and welcoming people, and that there are much fewer differences between us than I initially thought. Once I had these realizations, I began to understand the importance of Jesus' second greatest commandment. Jesus touched the untouchable, spoke with sinners, and constantly broke social rules to show God's love. To follow Jesus' example means going against the cultural norms that divide us, against the forces of alienation and othering. In confirmation class, we've talked about how we are called to stand in solidarity with the marginalized and outcast, just as Jesus did. When we stand in solidarity with people of other traditions, we are resisting the forces like prejudice, fear, and religious supremacism that are dividing our world. It may seem daunting, but there is so much we can do to better understand our neighbors of different backgrounds. We can educate ourselves on other faiths, speak with humility, and find common values. Jesus called us to live boldly and inclusively. The choice before us is clear. Will we live comfortably in division, or will we live courageously in love? Let us choose love.